Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Dave Palamar. I'm an Army veteran. Thank you all for your service. This is the first part of a five-part financial literacy material that I'm going to give to you. Um, please ask questions as much as you want. And Jethro, if you could advance the page, please. That's me. I was actually in the Army before that. I'm old. That's an Abrams tank. They were only coming out when I was in the early 80s. Jethro, could you advance, please? Before I start, I want to read my disclaimer. I offer this material in order to advise and assist. I offer this material based on knowledge I've gained. I've been in this business 35 years. I've worked for many years in the financial markets. This is a charitable volunteer offering. I'll not be held liable for any inaccuracies contained, though I've worked my best to verify everything I'm saying here. I teach this material as a volunteer, and I'm not purporting licensed or sanctioned experience. Okay, can you advance, Jethro? Financial overview. So there are five parts if you want to look at your calendars. Obviously, today we're doing financial overview. And again, you can ask any questions you want, I'll respond. Um, and then we're going to do a banking session, a credit session, credit such as your credit score, that sort of thing, a budget session, and savings and investments. Just to give you some context, as I said, I'm a veteran. I was in the armor. Actually, my entire family was military. My mother and father served in World War II, as did my aunt and three uncles, although two uncles were World War II. One was post-conflict. My brother-in-law, and I applied to one college. It was a military college. And I come from modest roots. My father did not graduate high school. When I was in my early 20s, financial literacy was a complete mystery to me. I didn't have to worry about getting the answers because I didn't know the questions. I was completely confused or ignorant about it, unknowing. So the reason I developed this deck, which I teach as a volunteer to veterans and to less advantaged teenagers, is I'm just trying to help the United States with all of our fantastic education. Some of it's not fantastic. We do a really poor job at teaching financial literacy. So this is my intent here. My intent is not to lecture you. My intent is to help you. You can ask questions anytime you want. Jethro, if you could please advance. So I'm going to download and put things at you. And as I told you, the other four modules are banking, credit, budgeting, and savings and investment. Financial planning overview or financial planning guidelines is sort of all encompassing. But maybe you're in the service right now and you're going to be getting out. Maybe you got out 3 months ago and you're 22, or maybe you got out 10 years ago, or you served 20 or 30 years and you're in your 40s or 50s. I actually worked as a personal trainer as well, and I find fitness and financial or physical fitness and financial fitness. We all know about physical fitness from the service, but financial fitness is a question of having a plan, having a map. One thing, or there's so many things that are critical and crucial, but it is imperative that you save right now, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much money you earn. You have to save right now. During the savings and investment block, I will show you some slides that will really raise your eyebrows. The difference between saving now, even something like $50 a month and more is better, versus waiting 1 year. The amount that money would grow to in the future is remarkable. The difference is remarkable by waiting just 1 year. The reason is it's math. It's called the money. It's called interest on interest because, as I used to tell my kids when they were 3 and 4 and 5 years old, when I taught them, your money has babies, and it just doesn't seem logical. But you invest some money, and it generates interest. but then the money continues to generate interest, but the interest generates interest, and it's cumulative and it's remarkable. There's something called the rule of 72. If you take the return, let's call it the annual return times the number of years, that is the time until which your money will double. So if you were to invest your money at 8% for 9 years, or at 8%, it would double in 9 years, because 8 times 9 equals 72. If you somehow got 14% a year, it would double in 5 point something years. The point is that money doubles, then it doubles again, then it doubles again. And I worship God. I don't worship money. But when I grew up, I was around 11, 12 years old. We lived paycheck to paycheck. I hope none of you do, but I did feel that. And it really stinks when you don't have the money to pay your bills. And so I don't think in terms of saving money and accumulating money so that I can buy a fancy car. I think it's such that so that I can have a future, provide for my family, and never be where I have to apply for. There's no dishonor in applying for welfare, but you're at the mercy of the government. So you need a financial plan, a map, and that kind of map includes your budget, which we'll talk about in the fourth block, and an investment plan. There's a book by Og Mandino called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's sort of a philosophy book, and it goes through how this person was kind of unorganized and couldn't pay their bills and this and that, and he got some advice to save 10% of every paycheck that he got. That's your first bill. So when you line up your bills, and again, I don't want to steal the thunder from the budget presentation, but you take 10% of your check and you invest that towards your future, and then you pay your bills with the rest. If you don't have enough, you got to cut something back. It's just cut and dry. You got to cut something back. And I have lived in nasty apartments because that's all I could afford. And I have eaten generic food, which, if you don't know what that is, if you go to the store and you buy cornflakes, it's like a white box with black print, and it's low end. It's the very lowest end. It costs 1/4 of what cornflakes would cost. So I hope none of you are in that situation. I hope none of you are worse than that, but I've been there. I actually had a negative net worth until I was 36. And that's not because I gambled or did anything stupid. It's because I sort of gambled on me by paying for a better education. I felt I would be able to earn more money going forward by paying for a solid education. There's really only two things that you should borrow for: a place to live, and one that's within the context of your means, not something over your head that you can't afford, and education. But it has to be meaningful education, the result of which will allow you to get a job that you can earn the kind of money you want to earn. You can't go to a crappy school and get crappy grades. It's a waste of time. I don't want to get political here about talking about loan relief and all that stuff, but if you go to a decent school, or the best school you can go to, and you get the best grades you can, I like to say create conditions under which something good will happen. You increase your chances that the thing that you want to have happen will happen. So a net worth statement. Net worth says your assets, which are things that you own, minus liabilities, things that you owe. So if you own a home that's worth $150,000, but you owe $100,000 on it, it's $50,000. So a net worth statement is when you take your assets and you list them on the left side of the page. Well, actually, that's a balance sheet. There is a book called Family Inc. Family Inc. talks about if people want to create their own personal income statement and balance sheet, which is a way that they can monitor their flow of money, the money that they take in, the money that they pay out. Some people would say, I don't need that. A balance sheet is assets equals liability plus equity. Suffice it to say, you want to be organized with what your assets are and what your liabilities are. And in my case, my liabilities exceeded my assets until I was 36. But when I was working back then, or back at that point, I saved everything I could. I lived very, very frugally. I didn't waste money. In fact, even now, my wallet is full of discount cards and AAA and Dwayne Reed and CVS and all these kinds of cards. And whenever I travel, I use points and buy one get one free and all that kind of business. And some people with a big family, they might want to go to Price Club or Costco or Sam's Club or this kind of thing. Anyway, your financial plan, your map, your net worth statement. Make a list of your assets. Make a list of your liabilities. Write down your cash flow, how the money comes in, how it goes out. Write out your biweekly budget every 2 weeks. Many people, not everybody, but many people get paid every 2 weeks. Again, we'll be doing this in the budget segment, but you want to write down all your expenses and some change, like sometimes insurance payments come quarterly versus, every month or things like that. But you want to have a grip on what your expenses are, what your liabilities are, and you want on a budget basis, on a biweekly basis, you want to be very clear on how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, and the first expense, like I said, is to your future, investing in your future. And you want to be on top of this. You don't want this to be random. It would be a good idea to get us an Excel spreadsheet or some sort of software, or even if you're an older guy like me, a piece of paper, put 15th on the top, put 30th in the middle, so you can be clear on what bills come at the 15th or, the 11th or the 13th or the 17th, and which bills come at the end of the month, the 28th, the 30th, the 3rd, things like that. And be organized about this and make sure you pay the bills, because you're still responsible for the bill. Even if you don't receive it and pay it, you actually will call up the place that sends you the bills and say, hey, I didn't get your bill. So again, just throwing things, random things, financial planning guidelines, identity theft and precautions. So you may or may not be aware of this, but when you go to the ATM machine, it's a good idea. Let me put my hand up here to type the number and block it with your hand. If you can believe it, there are people who actually use video cameras with magnification, and they watch people, and they try to just to hack, and it's really easy, unfortunately, to hack the numbers and to hack the person's PIN into their bank account. Be very careful with who you give your credit card to, who you give your debit card to. Uh, Monitor your statements to make sure there's no charges on there that you did not authorize, that were not yours. Excuse me. Be careful. Do not email or text any secure information that is basically public. It's so easy for people to hack and to publicly view your email and your text messages. You might have seen that commercial on the Super Bowl about text messages where all those strangers are in the person's house, and what they were trying to say is that they texted and all those people had access to their information. So identity theft. Identity theft is when someone gets your information and they open accounts. They open accounts on your in your name, and they buy things. And even if you, or maybe they take out a loan, even if you can get it corrected, it still is a lot of hassle, and it's gonna be a mark on your credit score until you fix it. Okay, and I want to show you something here. HTTPS colon backslash backslash www. Actually, let me see if I can copy this here. I'm sorry. It's www.annualcreditreport.com, and you can go ahead and order yourself a free credit report. And you should really do this once a year. And in the credit section, we're going to cover this. But there are 3 credit agencies: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. and you can get a free annual credit report each year and make sure all the information is accurate and that no one opened an account in your name. It's not a bad idea to freeze your credit. All you do is go online to the credit agencies, to those three credit agencies, and you freeze your credit. You can unfreeze it anytime you want. But if nobody can borrow money or try to take out a loan in your name, because even if you can get it fixed for the short period of time that the person has access to your credit, it's disruptive and it requires a lot of work and it exposes you and all this. So freezing your credit is not a bad idea. LifeLock costs money. I don't get a commission by recommending LifeLock, but it's something worth considering. LifeLock is they monitor uh, things that in your name that go on the dark web and inquiries that people make into your credit and things like this. Um, it's not a bad thing to consider. They have different levels. I do understand it costs money. Also, Norton Internet Security is another thing to think. Many, of course, the people younger than me are probably a lot smarter about internet security, but though Norton is another way to increase keeping yourself safer. Insurance. So, life insurance. Jethro, could you move to the next slide, please? Jethro here. Oh, good. There we are. So, you can take a look at this. The vertical axis is money, the horizontal axis is time. And the diagonal line indicates that, or this is how much money you need at a given time. So let's just say, you're young and married and don't have kids. You need a certain amount of money. Actually, it starts at zero. That's not really accurate, but it at a certain point when you get married, you need a certain amount of money. That money is either cash you have on hand, like investments. That's not used for paying bills, but available money to use, to buy what you need to buy and to live your life. And so that the total amount of money you need is comprised of either investments that you have or life insurance. So in the beginning, maybe when you start your relationship, you might not have a lot of money or a lot of investments. So you really have to make up for that with life insurance. Now, maybe the husband or wife works, or they both work, whoever the breadwinner is, whatever paycheck is being depended on, that amount has to be protected on an annuity basis in case that person was to die. So the reason that the line increases is as you get older and as things become more expensive and your obligations increase, and maybe you have a home, maybe you have a second home, maybe you have to take care of your parents, maybe you have kids, the amount of money that you need grows. But of course, your investments are growing too. So the shortfall between the investments that you have and how much you need, which continues to grow, should be made up with life insurance. Jethro, if we can go back to the previous, please. So I'm not going to tell you and make arguments with you between whole or term, but you might want to think about getting life insurance, even if you're single, because the younger you are, the less expensive life insurance is, and you might need it later on. Many people use a combination of whole life and term life. So whole life is more expensive. It's called permanent insurance. You pay the company, and by the way, you're all veterans, so you can all use USAA. You're not like Rob Gronkowski trying to get it. You actually are entitled to it. Beautiful thing about USAA is they don't pay their salespeople commissions, which for most companies is a major part of the expense, and that's why, well, that contributes to the insurance, to the premium costing a lot of money. But you might want to consider some. Now, some people swear by term life. They say, why would I possibly want to pay for whole life? Well, there's some reasons to have whole life. Uh, because you pay premiums into whole life, eventually it becomes self-funding. I think the term is paid up additions. So no matter how much money you have in investments, there probably comes a point, and even if you got past the point where maybe your kids are older and they graduate college and it's just you and your spouse or you by yourself, and you don't really have this great need, it's never a bad idea to have a little bit of life insurance for your loved ones. It might seem morbid or sad, but it's reality. We're all going to die. Um, that if you take that amount of money that you need, which is comprised of your investments and your insurance, maybe some sort of blend of whole or term for the insurance portion is worth thinking about. So check the prices, check what you can afford. Uh, a little bit of whole life. By the way, when you are paying the premiums for whole life, there comes a point, as I said, paid up additions, at which it becomes self sufficient. You don't have to pay the premiums anymore. And there's also a point, if you choose to no longer have the insurance, if you have to, you can borrow from it or you can out the cash value and just end the policy. But term policies, one thing I like to think about is a 20-year level premium term policy. The older you get, the more insurance costs. So you can take out a policy with USAA and, say you're 25 and you take it out from 25 to 45, or say you're 40, you take it out from 40 to 60. And they'll make the face amount that will be payable upon your death will be a certain amount. And the premium, of course, would get more expensive the older you are, but they smooth it out. They make it a stable or a consistent premium, which means you're overpaying in the beginning and you're underpaying later. And that 20-year term might get you through the point from when your kids are born, they graduate high school, and if they're going to go to college or they go into service. And that's one of a gazillion ways of looking at term insurance, that you do that 20-year level premium and maybe you add a little more term. However, it gets more expensive the older you are, and it's gone. If you don't pay the premium, it's gone, whereas whole life is there. Disability insurance. This is not, we don't think about this in the military because we get paid. And if we get hurt, then we go in a hospital and we get fixed. In the civilian world, if you get hurt, there's things like workers' comp. But if you get hurt or get a disease, I hope you don't, but it's possible. It's called paycheck insurance. So I don't know if USA sells this, but there are fine companies like Northwest Mutual, which getting a commission for, or New York Life, or other fine companies. And you can take a look at disability insurance and consider if you want to insure your paycheck. And there's also a rider called Your Occupation or something to that, similar to that. And that will ensure you that if you got hurt or injured, even if you can still work, but you can't do your specific job, the policy would pay you. Say, for example, you do a job and you're outside and you walk around and this and that, but you somehow got hurt, so you were no longer mobile. You can work from home. COVID has taught us that you can make a living. But since you can't do your job, the policy would pay you. I'm not telling you to get it. I'm just telling you to think about it. Homeowners insurance. Well, it's a mortgage, but it's prudent too, because people slip on the sidewalk in front of your house, or fall out of the tree, or slip in your house, or there's fires, or this or that. You want to make sure you have your homeowner insurance in order, and USA provides that. Personal property insurance. Even if you're a renter, some places require personal property insurance, but this is insurance for your personal belongings in case they get stolen or damaged, independent of what the landlord would pay for you. Umbrella insurance. Umbrella insurance is extra liability insurance. And years ago, I ran a pickup basketball game, a 4-on-4 game. And we used a bunch of people from work, and there were some customers. And one time, if you know how to play basketball, you check the ball before the game when you're playing half court. And two guys started having words with each other, and they checked the ball, yeah, and they kind of threw the ball at the guy a little bit. I get a call a couple of days later saying, "Do you remember that?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I need you to come testify for me. The guy's suing me," because he felt he had money and he wanted to try to get some money from him, because he was saying that his finger got jammed and it needed an operation. It ended up being frivolous and it went away. You'll read in financial books that you want to consider getting umbrella insurance for whatever your net worth is, because if somebody wants to sue you, that's what they're going to look at. They're not going to sue you for $100 million, and they're not going to sue you for $20,000. They're going to sue you for whatever. And you might say, well, that's ridiculous. But this is a country that paid a woman $6 million for burning her leg by having a cup of McDonald's coffee between her legs when she drove away in her car. You can obviously see what I think about that, but I wouldn't take a chance. I would think about umbrella insurance. Long-term care insurance. Well, this is USAA sells this too through one of their partners. When you get sick, and I hope you don't have any experience with this. I unfortunately do. Both of my parents, they're veterans, they're both gone. But at the end of their lives, as many people do, they need someone to take care of them. Insurance doesn't pay for this. Insurance pays for medical bills. It doesn't pay for someone to feed or take someone to the not able to do that themselves. However, long-term care insurance is expensive. So I'm not telling you to buy it or not buy it. I'm suggesting that you investigate it. Health insurance, well, you need to buy health insurance, and whether it's through Obamacare or through your employer, you should compare the plans and see what you can afford versus what your needs are. Auto insurance, of course, USA does this. I've had USA auto insurance since 1979, and they've always done right by me. Things like the premium, the deductible, the copay, the maximum amount covered. You got to look at these choices. If your employer offers some sort of healthcare savings account, these are typically very advantageous to take advantage of. Some employers offer them, some don't. But what it is it allows you to use pre-tax money for your health expenses. An HSA is different than an HCSA and an MRA and all these other A's. But see what your employer offers and investigate it because you want to take advantage and use pre-tax dollars as much as you can for the same logic. And it's not written here, but your 401k, that you can afford it, you should maximize your contribution to your 401k. I think it's something like 24,500 a year is the limit. Maybe you can't do that much, maybe you can do less, but if you can maximize it, you should do that, because that's pre-tax dollars and it's leveraging your savings. Some employers match a portion of how much you contribute to a 401k. At the minimum, I would make sure that I contribute to the 401k the portion that my employer matches. For example, they might match the first 6% of your paycheck. If you can't afford a higher percentage, so it is, but make sure you do that 6%. Estate planning, wills. When you die without a will, it's called intestate. And there's legal, I'm not a lawyer, but I know a little bit about this. You die intestate, and your valuables or your assets will be distributed per stirpes. There's legal rules that if you have not designated who your things go to, that they go, for example, a husband and wife, one goes to the other. If you don't have that, it would typically go to your siblings. There's rules that this is written. So why leave it to chance? Why not state what you want it to be? You can change your will as often as you want. Now, I don't like to waste money, but I don't mind going to a lawyer because I want it done right. But that's not to say you can't do it online and get a document online and have a very fine document executed. Trusts. There's different kinds of trusts. Some are revocable, some are irrevocable. Some protect you from going through probate. And that means when you die, your belongings or your assets become adjudicated in a public forum through a legal process. So it's public. Anybody who wants to snoop can see what your stuff was, what your value was. And maybe you don't care about that. But one of the things that happened in COVID, besides the horrible loss of death and health ramifications, were the system got bogged down. It took longer to get a passport. It took longer to get your assets through probate. So if you were to die and you wanted your home to go to your children and to be sold so they can get, it just takes longer. So talk to a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but look into, yeah, you should have a will. Everybody should have a will. You might want to have a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, and depending on how much money you have, some things can have money removed from your estate so they're not taxable to save the tax liability when things pass to your heirs. Health proxies, there's different kinds, but you typically hear about pulling the plug. Do you want to give somebody who you love and trust the right to make a health decision for you, such that if you were to get into an accident or have a medical condition come about, that they would enact your wishes? It's common that a spouse would do that to each other, and some people say, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's something you want to look into. Powers of attorney. And by the way, health proxies and powers of attorney and all this estate planning stuff, not only is it imperative that you and your spouse or SO look at this for yourselves and for your kids, but for all of us, for our parents and loved ones as they age, uh, let's just say, well, my parents started to get older and they're gone now. They didn't have the ability to make the right decisions, let's say, or to evaluate things that they had to do financially. So typically, people, and it's an uncomfortable conversation, but you have to have it, that an elderly person or a parent would consider granting a limited power of attorney or a financial power of attorney to their adult child or children, in some cases to make health decisions, in some cases to say mom goes into the nursing home and she's in really bad shape. You might want to sell her a home because she's not going to leave the nursing home, even if she's going to live for 5 years. But you might want to sell a home to pay the bills. If you have a power of attorney, you can go ahead and do that. And of course, if there's not trust there or comfort there, then maybe people don't want to cede that power of attorney. And by the way, this is rife for people to do immoral things. So I'm not suggesting it's not without risk. And by the way, for those of us with elderly parents, sometimes you'll see commercials or shows where an elderly person who's maybe naive to some of the internet or to scammers, somebody might call up, oh, hi, how are you, Maria? And da, 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 da. They become friendly with them and they've done some research on them. So they talk about their church or their flower garden or the songs that they like or where they grew up. It's not a friend at all. It's a scammer, and they get them to sign things, and we've heard about these things. And I don't know, I'm talking to a spectrum of age of people here, but be conscious of this stuff for yourself. People trying to dupe you, do not give information. Do not respond to incoming calls to give account numbers in this kind of business and passwords, but be very, very especially conscious of the risks of your parents doing this. Tax planning and filing, of course, it's March 16th, 2022, and we're about a month away from turning in our taxes, unless for some reason it's extended. Not only do we have to file our taxes or face potential penalties, but we also want to get with your accountant, or if you don't have one, find one, a tax advisor. Are there things you could be doing that would be wiser to reduce your tax burden and to make things good for you going forward? So it's just something worth looking at, that you should uh, get professional counsel to make sure that you're doing with your money the wisest thing to reduce your bills and to reduce your tax liability as best as it can. And even things like a mortgage, should it be a 15-year? Should it be a 30-year? Should it be a floating or fixed? The risks, the pros and cons of each of those. I'd get professional counseling before I would. Nothing against any bank, but before I would ask them. By the way, USA does this too, so I trust them. Record keeping. It applies to your parents as they get older, in case you have to step in to make sure that you know where all their stuff is. But it applies to all of us. We should all have a book that lists our lawyer, our accountant, our investment advisor, the account numbers, the phone number, the organization. Because if something happened to you, whether it's your spouse or SO, or you got hurt, or you died, or you became somehow incapacitated, or you got in an accident where you just didn't have your mental capacity, even if it comes back in a month, it's just kind of good to have a war plan, since we're all military people, where someone else can help you out. Granted, you don't want to leave this in a public place, but you might want to leave it in a secure place, where someone who you love, or several people who you love, know where it is, in case they find you. Oh my God, and they find that you had a problem. At least that person knows in advance, or several people know in advance, so they can come help you. By the way, you might want to consider a lockbox for, or even a safe, but at least a lockbox, fireproof lockbox, to hold your birth certificate, your licenses, your passport, things like this. So I speak often. I teach financial planning often. I typically am asked questions, or I'm in front of a live audience. So uh, that's all I really have to offer. If there are any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I am finished. And if you're watching this live, thank you for your attention. And if you're watching this in the future taped, very best to you. This is Seven Eagle Group. Thanks for watching. And you can join our service here, no cost to you, such that you're in our network, so we can try to find you a job if you're looking for a job. And well, you can look at that slide yourself. So that is it for me. Thank you.